politician, because Kordić was a politician, and knowing about the trial, the trial chamber and how it worked, I went back to prosecute Milosevic. But now the Milosevic trial was very different. It's the head prosecutor is Del Ponte. Her interests were very heavily focused on her own publicity, and she was completely willing to contemplate political pressure when it was brought to bear. And remember, I'm not giving you answers, I'm giving you things to think about. And in the same way as in the small-scale political, the Jelisić trial was affected by non-legal considerations. The judges wanted to have a bigger fish. Why, I must tell you this, let me just go back. The morning after that incomprehensible verdict, one of the judges, a very nice chap, spoke to a colleague of mine, and he said, "Oh, what did you think of our verdict in the case of Jelisić?" Well, my colleague was a little bit embarrassed. This is the judge asking him, "Well, what do you think of our judgment?" And so he didn't say very much. To which the judge said, "Oh, we thought he was guilty of genocide, but we wanted to keep it for a bigger fish." Let me go back to the next trial and to Mrs. Del Ponte and to what happened in Milosevic. Now, very unfortunately, I keep looking, but she doesn't seem to be coming back. My friend Nena Tromp, who is here, you'll see her, she's in blue today, I'm not sure. And if you see her, she is the most knowledgeable person about the Milosevic trial, and also the person who got two of the very, very best bits of evidence in the case. The first of which is interesting for the same reason, the dangers of political manipulation. Let's look at those documents. We'll pass over a picture of Marino Ocampo, and here's a series of documents. Nena Tromp identified them through very skillful work, and through even more skillful work, got to see them, and that led to us being able to apply to the court for an order that they should be produced. They were stenographically recorded, word-for-word records of meetings of something called the Supreme Defense Council for about a 9-year period, and they covered, amongst other things, the period of Srebrenica. At the meetings was Milosevic, normally Bulatovic, and Lilic, the president of the rump Yugoslavia, and then the chiefs of staff and other people in attendance. The records were bound to be, as a minimum, extremely interesting. They showed, of course people knew that what they said was being recorded, so they sometimes speak guardedly, but they show how it was that Serbia supported the Serbs in Bosnia. How it was that Serbia may have known about and supported paramilitaries operating in Bosnia. They were documents of enormous importance. And the judges were in possession of an application from me to have these documents ordered to be produced, and they were certainly going to be produced. And there was no reason why they should not be publicly available. However, Serbia, which was probably cleverer at politics than Mrs. Del Ponte, Serbia knowing it, Mrs. Del Ponte being unaware of this fact, persuaded her to offer no objection to making minor, what's called redactions to the documents. The odd passage here or there might, I suppose, get blanked out, so that when it starts to get interesting, oh my goodness, that's what the public got. And that, and that. The judges and the lawyers could see it, but the public on either side, the Serbs or the Bosnians, those in whose name this was being done, and if things were being done against them, those against whom things were being done, could not know what was said. And indeed, until very recently, if I could remember in detail, I would no doubt be taken away and imprisoned or punished in some ghastly way if I told you. It happens that very recently, they or most of them have finally become available. Whether that's because it now suits the interests of Serbia no longer to press the resistance is a matter I can't help you with. But what I can tell you is this. 2 years ago, the other great international court in The Hague, the International Court of Justice, the world's top court, was dealing with not the trial of individuals, because of course the tribunal deals only with individuals, but was dealing with the case brought by Bosnia as a state against Serbia as a state for genocide. Now, do you think that that court operated on this version of documents or something that would have looked more like that? Which do you think? There'd be no reason, would there, for the International Court of Justice to bind itself to have impenetrable black? But it did. The decision on the Bosnian case in the International Court of Justice, for reasons that many simply cannot follow, declined even to ask for the full version of the records and carried on with what it was that that political deal made between Serbia and Mrs. Del Ponte had left for the public to see. The original intention may well have been okay, or I don't know, but the unintended consequences of corrupting the legal process can be quite far-reaching. The second point about the Milosevic trial, again, as it happens, evidence that Nina Tromp found relates to a very important issue, I think, as you and anybody else contemplates whether you should attempt to bring to justice people who have been engaged in war, given that war is lawful, it's not illegal yet, and that people will always do terrible things in wars. And after a war is over, the leader of the losing side may well find himself or herself categorized in very strong terms and assumed to be monumentally guilty. So that Milosevic, for example, was given, but never by me, the term the butcher of the Balkans. And there was some kind of an assumption that he was a monster. And if you asked a person in the public house in England or bar in America who has no more than newspaper information about such events, he or she will assume that this was a monster. Well, he may have been. But certainly we found no evidence of criminality in his pre-existing work as banker and lawyer. Whether Mr. Sell at the back is going to be able to remind me of something I've forgotten, but I don't think so. And his early decisions, which led to the, or were part of the process leading to the breakup of the former Yugoslavia and thus to the conflicts, may have been ill-advised, or they may subsequently have been seen to be ill-advised, but they couldn't be categorized as criminal. Trying to keep the former Yugoslavia together, was that criminal? I'm not sure how it could be. Trying even to keep all Serbs together would be about as criminal, I suppose, as it would be criminal when Scotland, separate, Scotland's that little bit up in England, where the men wear skirts and all that sort of thing. Also, I didn't say that, but they want to become separate, you know that. Perhaps you don't. Some of them do. Well, now, supposing they wanted to become separate, and there was a lot of Scots living in a little bit in England, would it be criminal for them to say, well, thanks very much, we want to go off, but we'd also like to have them with us? I don't think so. I mean, it might be very undesirable, and it might fail. So, in the case of Milosevic, what it seemed to me was important to do, amongst other things, was not just to look at him and to try and work out how it was, if at all, that you could pin something on him for what he did. It might get you a conviction, so what? What you're more interested in is when the man in the public house or the bar, and when the reader in years to come of a summary of this case would recognise as criminal behaviour, however defined. It may be that it's possible to go to about 1990 into something called the log revolution, to say, well, by then Milosevic had overstepped across the line. But these days, with the things that politicians, our own included, of course, English, American, everybody else do, I'm not sure that that would have attracted huge support as a basis for any massive trial. But the following year, in 1991, something happened that was recorded several years later on this bit of video that was located for what it was. And that's Stanisic with Milosevic. They're not the best of pictures. And this was a ceremony of a group called the Red Berets. And ill-advisedly, Milosevic went to the ceremony and was saluted, and he told the people he'd read their briefings at the time, and he was shown the map. You can see him being shown the map of all the things that they've done. There he is talking to Frankie, I think, and there to another of the leaders. And what they said was, Mr. President, thank you for establishing us in 1991. What had he established? He had established a paramilitary group that operated in other, now independent territories. There is no lawful justification for that. Paramilitary groups, we know, destabilize society.